Brad, thank you so much for being here. You just had the screening of your film called
Off the Tracks. So the movie Off the Tracks is about Final Cut Pro 10, how when it was released in 2011.
Everybody was really excited about it. Randy Ubilos, the creator of Final Cut Pro 7 and all the previous, came up there and he demoed it.
All I do is wave the cursor across the frames. Things move around.
When they did the demo of dragging out an audio clip and it knocking another audio clip out the way, I was like, wow.
It's got a magnetic timeline and people are still cheering and I'm like, wait a minute. No, this isn't what I want. What are you doing?
It was a big controversy and there was a lot of people who left Final Cut Pro 10.
Right. Does Apple endorse this film? Did they give you any money to make the film?
That is a good question. No, they did not.
Apple just released a new version of their famous editing software, Final Cut Pro.
The movie, first of all, starts on a note of, look at this huge mistake Apple made.
We had the launch of Final Cut 10 came out, and so there was a lot of bad publicity that was running around.
I don't know if you've ever seen, an iPhone commercial or something that talks about what they got wrong.
Yeah.
With the launch of Final Cut Pro 10, they lost 1 million users overnight. I started using Final Cut Pro 10 on the day it was released, and I did the thing everybody did, is open it up, go, oh my God, and shut it back down again.
My story about Final Cut Pro 10 is I came home with a brand new 2011 MacBook Pro, and there was Final Cut Pro 10 on the App Store. I'd been waiting for it for months. As I was downloading it, I had this thought in my head, what if I don't have to install Final Cut Studio? What if I can just start clean? And then I tried to open up a Final Cut 7 project and saw it, couldn't see them. And then I started Googling about it, and that's when I noticed that the internet had just exploded with hate.
There was this shocking event that happened in June, Final Cut Pro 10 or X. I quickly looked at it and said, I can't use this. By simultaneously releasing a product that we couldn't use professionally and end-of-lifing the product that we were using sent a kind of a stick in the eye message.
I believed in some of the ideas that I saw from that NAB preview, which, the magnetic timeline and keywords and organization.
If you had asked Henry Ford, what did people really want? He probably would have said they wanted a faster horse. If you get in an early Ford and thought that you could go like this and it would make the car go faster and pull them back and make the car stop and pull them to one side or the other to make the car turn, that sounds ridiculous. The metaphor changes and the user interface changes too.
It is weird what the magnetic timeline does until you get the right metaphor for it.
If you had to explain to somebody that doesn't know what the magnetic timeline is, what's the metaphor that is so intuitive once you understand it?
Well, I had the opportunity to interview a guy named Dave Cerf, and Dave Cerf's job at Apple for 2 years was to take Randy's rough ideas for magnetic timeline and really design them and implement them. And what he came up with so that the design team could kind of figure out how to do it was he took kids' blocks, lined them up.
If you did have a bunch of kids' blocks sitting there on a platform, you pulled one out, they wouldn't close up. And this was exactly the problem.
And that's kind of like a traditional track, right? By default, nothing moves, everything stays in place.
So what we did was we took this concept of the blocks on a platform and we put it at an angle.
Kind of have to tilt your head or almost turn upside down, and you see a different perspective. There's that moment where like the magnetic timeline clicks, then it's like, oh, of course.
Yeah.
And when you put the blocks at an angle and you take one of the blocks away, they do close up because of gravity.
The magnetic timeline was very disorienting for about 10 minutes, and then you realize how brilliant it is.
Then you suddenly get it.
When you're cutting and when you're using a tool, there's really two things happening. One is you're telling a story. Actually, I want to put it right here. And then you have to figure out a rational way of translating that with the software. If I put this over here and creating what is already in your head, they are pushing the software towards eliminating that rational step that you have to take to build what you already have in your head. So this is what I did. See those blue areas here? It's telling me what's about to happen if I release my mouse at this point. Many times you don't have to manage as much as with another software. And you had a scene in the film that I think really shows that in a perfect way.
What happens if you want to change the order of this shot? So I'm just going to press Command here when I drag this shot, and you see this is Premiere warning me something's gonna happen here. Be careful.
Jesus Perez Miranda from Spain, he shows in that demo, if you're moving clips around,
this is a mess.
How it creates gaps and it cuts your music track in half.
I have a gap here, I have 2 gaps here, my whole music track is broken in half, and I have to fix this mess.
And then he compares that into 10 and how you just do it, you just move it.
Here I have the same shot. It's overlapping the audio, it's a split edit as well. And I'm just going to swap the shot, and that's it.
I just did a documentary in Premiere. You're spending 5 seconds making a creative choice, and then you're spending 30 to 60 seconds doing management work to catch up with what you want to do. So you're losing that momentum when you're cutting. And that's the number one reason why I like to cut Final Cut 10 whenever I can, is I stay in the state where I'm just telling the story longer and I don't get disrupted by having to then manage things on the side.
Then you might make a different film because you're more immersed in your media than if you weren't.
Dave Cerf told me as well that one of the ideas was kind of harken back to the original Mac and the development of the iPhone and iPad to make sure that the person who's watching the person operating understands what they're doing just by watching over their shoulder.
Yeah, and I'd be curious to know if you understand it, because on the channel oftentimes I cut scenes in Final Cut 10 and most of the people watching it are probably not familiar with the software. This thing here is attached there. I don't want this to move, because if I put this over here, that little guy is going to move as well. I press the tilde key and I'll do that move again. And now this guy stays in place. I wanted to ask you, is there something you don't like about Final Cut 10? Something that needs to change?
Oh man.
Before we move on to what could be improved in Final Cut Pro 10, I want to take a brief moment and thank Skillshare for their support. It's an online learning community with thousands of classes in filmmaking, editing, writing, design, business, tech, and more. Fittingly, I want to recommend a course by Benjamin Holsel. It's a 20-video tutorial to get you started in Final Cut Pro 10.
So we're going to cover all the basic skills for those that have never used Final Cut Pro 10, but there's also going to be some great skills in there for those that have used the software before.
From opening the software, importing, laying out your project, cutting to outputting. If Final Cut is not your game, Skillshare offers courses in Premiere, Resolve, and all the other tools out there. So, the first 500 people that sign up through the link in the video description get a 2 months free trial. Now back to Brad and what he doesn't like about Final Cut Pro 10.
I write in almost daily to Apple. I think the biggest thing is the idea of collaboration. And I know we hear over and over and over that collaboration is what's great in Avid, and that's why film and TV people rely on it.
The way Avid works, my assistant sees this same project tree. They can go into a cut and I can be in something else. And once I close that bin, then whatever I've done in that bin becomes available to my assistant and vice versa.
But Apple doesn't necessarily care about that market. They care about everybody else.
Yeah.
So why do they care about collaboration? But I make the counter argument that everybody needs collaboration.
Yes.
You know, students and teachers, they need collaborative tools. They need to be able to work over the cloud. They need to be able to work over, you know, a shared network.
Yeah, I think the selecting process is still not perfect. What's really strong in Premiere is, like, I can look at my select reel and I have my markers running on the side in a different tab, and as I'm going through it, I see the thumbnail of the shot and I see the keyword and I see a detailed description super fast, and I feel in Final Cut 10 that is missing. Yes, it's all visual and you're sort of intuitively finding shots, but where you can really like organize it in a way where you have fast and quality access to your shots is, I think, the biggest challenge. And
that might be a good little segue, though, to talk just briefly about how I organized my documentary.
Yeah, how do you do it?
Because I had over 40 interviews. I created keyword collections that were related to certain topics and things that they were talking about. And then I created library level smart collections that related to each of the 6 sections that I initially had for my documentary. So if I wanted to see everything everybody said that would fit into a certain section, I just clicked on that smart collection and instantly every clip showed up. And then I could take it a step further because as I went along, I would favorite the nuggets. And I love that. I think there's ways to take the visual further.
Yes.
Here's the thing, I think it's important to note that Off the Tracks isn't simply just a documentary about software or how Final Cut works. Because if it is, I think it would be a boring tutorial. It's really a documentary that's about ideas. It's about themes. It's about what Final Cut represents in a bigger picture of how storytelling is being democratized, how things are changing, and how that's going to affect people in the future who want to be creative. That's what I'm passionate about. I'm not passionate about selling 10 million copies of Final Cut Pro 10.
Today, you have very little excuse not to make a film if you really want to make a film.
If you're a creative person and you want to tell a story, you have everything it takes to tell a story. So if you don't do it, it's your fault.
The mechanics of editing have kind of gone away, and it really now comes down to storytelling.
If somebody wants to see the film, how does that work?
I would say check offthetracksmovie.com. We're looking at getting it up on Vimeo's OTT service and Amazon. Also working on getting it onto iTunes. I want to make sure that when I get it out there that it can be available in as many places as possible.
Cool. This has been quite the conversation, and I'm gonna actually make this whole conversation available on Patreon, so consider joining. If you're not ready to join yet, that's okay, that's fine. Still hop on over, because I'm gonna show a smaller video of how I'm cutting this episode on Final Cut 10. So I'm gonna bring this into the timeline. Boom. And I'm gonna ask the question to you again. Do you understand what I'm doing creatively, and does it feel like it's happening almost instantly, or do you still feel like I'm managing a lot of things? And I'd be very curious to see what you think. So hop on over. Brad, thank you so much. I wish you much success with this project. I hope you're going to do many more, because it shows that if you feel like strongly about something and you go out and do it, it's a lot of cool things can happen, and I think a lot of cool things are happening to you. So
I totally agree. It's been a fun experience.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thanks,
and
Sven.
I'll see you soon.